What if the hero you cheered for in battle was hiding a darkness so vile it would haunt history for centuries? Gilles De Rais, a name etched in the annals of 15th century France, was once hailed as a noble knight, a comrade of Joan of Arc, and a savior of his nation. But beneath the gleaming armor and tales of valor lay a monster whose crimes would make your blood run cold. Before you dive into this chilling tale, hit that subscribe button and like this video to join us in uncovering the darkest corners of history. Share it with friends who love a shocking story and let us know in the comments. Can you believe a war hero could become such a fiend? Gilles De Rais was born in 1404 at Champtocé Castle, a fortress looming over the Loire Valley. He was no ordinary noble. By age 11, he inherited vast wealth and titles, making him one of France's richest men. His piercing blue eyes and commanding presence turned heads, but it was his mind, sharp, ambitious, and restless, that set him apart. Historians note his early fascination with the occult, scribbling notes about alchemy in the margins of his books. This wasn't the quirky hobby of a bored aristocrat. It was the first spark of something sinister. In 1429, Gilles rode into history alongside Joan of Arc during the 100 Years' War. At 25, he was a skilled commander, his strategies helping to lift the siege of Orléans. Chroniclers described him as fearless, his sword flashing as he rallied troops against the English. King Charles VII rewarded him with the title of Marshal of France, a rare honor for someone so young. To the people, Gilles was a golden knight, a symbol of hope. But even then, whispers followed him. Soldiers noticed his lavish spending, gold-embroidered cloaks, feasts that drained his fortune. Some said he seemed haunted, his gaze lingering too long on the horizon, as if searching for something beyond the battlefield. What few knew was that Gilles' wealth was dwindling. By 1432, his reckless spending on plays, parties, and private armies had bled his coffers dry. Desperate to maintain his status, he turned to a dangerous obsession: alchemy. This wasn't the benign pursuit of turning lead to gold. Gilles sought power, supernatural, eternal power. He hired alchemists, shady figures who promised secrets of immortality. One, an Italian named Francesco Prelati, became his confidant. Prelati's charm and tales of demonic pacts fed Gilles' growing hunger for the forbidden. Modern psychologists might call this the start of his descent into madness, a mix of narcissism and delusion. But to Gilles, it was a quest for godlike control. Then, children began to vanish. In the villages around Gilles' castles, Machecoul-Tifauge, Champtocé parents whispered of missing sons and daughters. A boy sent to deliver bread never returned. A girl fetching water vanished into the night. By 1437, dozens were gone, and rumors pointed to the Lord's dark towers. Gilles' castles, once symbols of prestige, became places of dread. Servants spoke of strange cries echoing through the halls of locked rooms no one dared enter. Yet his status as a war hero shielded him. Who would accuse a marshal of France? The truth, when it emerged, was unimaginable. Gilles wasn't just a spendthrift noble or an eccentric alchemist. He was orchestrating rituals so horrific they defied comprehension. In 1440, when authorities finally stormed his castle, they uncovered evidence of crimes that would stain his name forever. What drove a man who fought for God and country to such depravity? And how did he hide it for so long? This is just the beginning of Gilles De Rais' story. A tale of heroism twisted into horror. Stick with us as we unravel the secrets of his double life in the next part. What could turn a night into a nightmare? Keep reading to find out, and let us know in the comments what you think of Gilles so far. The shadows of Machecoul. What secrets lurked behind the stone walls of Gilles De Rais' castle, where the cries of missing children went unheard? In the early 1430s, Gilles' life as a celebrated war hero began to unravel, revealing a man consumed by desires far darker than anyone could have imagined. If you're gripped by this chilling tale, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and share it with friends who crave dark history. Drop a comment below. What would you do if you lived near a noble hiding such horrors? By 1432, Gilles De Rais was a man teetering on the edge. His role in the 100 Years' War had made him a legend, but peace brought no solace. The end of major battles left him restless, his vast estates feeling like gilded cages. Magical Castle. His primary residence was a fortress of opulence tapestries adorned with mythical beasts, banquet halls echoing with music. Yet it was here in the labyrinthine corridors that Gilles' descent into darkness took root. Historical records show he spent recklessly staging lavish theatrical productions that cost thousands of livres. One play, The Mystery of the Siege of Orléans, employed over 140 actors and drained his fortune further. To villagers, it seemed extravagant. To Gilles, it was a distraction from an insatiable void. His obsession with alchemy grew feverish. Francesco Prelati, the charismatic Italian alchemist, became a constant presence. Prelati didn't just promise gold, he spoke of summoning demons to grant power and eternal life. Gilles enthralled converted a tower in Machecoul into a secret laboratory. Servants reported strange smells, sulfur, burning herbs, and flickering lights at midnight. Modern scholars suggest Gilles' fixation on the occult stemmed from a need for control, a way to reclaim the glory of his war days. But control came at a cost. Prelati's rituals required offerings, and Gilles' twisted mind turned to the unthinkable. Children began disappearing in alarming numbers. Between 1432 and 1437, estimates suggest 30 to 60 children vanished around Machecoul alone. Parents spoke of boys lured by promises of work or food, only to never return. Gilles' inner circle trusted servants like Henriette Griard and Poitou played a grim role. They scoured villages targeting the poor, the orphaned, or the unnoticed. A 1439 trial transcript details a chilling account. A boy named Jean, aged 12, was offered a loaf of bread to visit the castle. He was never seen again. Villagers whispered of a beast in Machecoul, but fear of Gilles' power kept them silent. His status as a noble, coupled with his war hero reputation, made accusations unthinkable. What happened inside those walls, court records from 1440, paint a gruesome picture. Gilles and his accomplices didn't just kill, they orchestrated rituals steeped in black magic. Children were lured to secluded chambers where Gilles, fueled by wine, and Prelati's incantations committed unspeakable acts. The rituals meant to summon demons like Baron were grotesque parodies of religious ceremonies. Blood pain and sacrifice were central, with Gilles believing these acts would unlock supernatural power. Modern forensic psychology might label him a sadistic psychopath, his actions driven by a need for dominance and pleasure. Yet in his mind, he was a man chasing divinity through depravity. The villagers' fear grew, but Gilles' arrogance shielded him. He threw lavish feasts, inviting local nobles who saw only his charm and wealth. His charisma was a mask hiding the monster within. One servant, Etienne Corillot, later confessed to disposing of remains in the castle's furnaces, a task so routine it became numbingly normal. The scale of the crimes, potentially 80 to 200 victims over 8 years, staggers the imagination. How did he evade suspicion for so long? His wealth bought silence, and his reputation deflected scrutiny. But cracks were forming. In 1438, Gilles' reckless spending forced him to sell land, angering his family and drawing the church's attention. A dispute with a cleric in 1440 would prove his undoing, but that's a tale for the next part. What drove Gilles to such depths? Was it madness, greed, or something far more sinister? Stay with us as we explore the mind of this medieval monster in the next chapter. The Mask of Piety. How does a man bathed in blood still kneel in prayer, fooling even the devout Gilles De Rais, Once a hero of France, hid his monstrous deeds behind a facade of faith and generosity, a contradiction that chills the soul. If this tale of dark history grips you, smash that like button, subscribe to Weird History Unveiled, and share this video with anyone who loves uncovering the past's horrors. Drop a comment. Could you spot a monster hiding in plain sight like Gilles by the late 1430s? Gilles De Rais was a paradox, a noble who funded chapels and prayed fervently, yet orchestrated atrocities in the shadows of his castles. His public persona was impeccable. He endowed churches, donated to orphanages, and even commissioned a private chapel at Machecoul, adorned with gold crucifixes and stained glass. Peasants saw him as a pious lord, his generosity a beacon in war-torn France. In 1435, he funded a grand procession honoring Joan of Arc, weeping publicly for his fallen comrade. To onlookers, Gilles was a man of God, his faith as steadfast as his sword arm. But this was a performance, a meticulously crafted mask. Behind closed doors, Gilles' world was a nightmare. His alchemical pursuits with Francesco Prelati had escalated, their rituals growing ever more depraved. Trial records from 1440 reveal chilling details. Gilles believed demonic forces demanded sacrifices to grant him wealth and power. Children, often boys aged 8 to 14, were lured to his castles with promises of apprenticeship or alms. Once inside, they faced horrors unimaginable. Gilles' accomplices, Henriette Poitou and others, helped restrain victims as he performed rituals blending sadistic pleasure with occult fervor. Modern criminologists might diagnose him with a lethal mix of psychopathy and obsessive delusion, his faith in demons outweighing any moral compass. The body count rose. Estimates from the 1440 trial suggest 80 to 200 children perished across Gilles' estates, their remains burned or buried in hidden pits. One account describes a chamber in Tiffauges castle, its walls stained with blood, where Gilles kept trophies, small bones, or clothing as mementos. Yet he attended Mass daily, his face serene, as if untouched by guilt. This duality fascinates psychologists today. Was Gilles compartmentalizing his evil, or did he believe his piety absolved him? Some historians argue his obsession with Joan of Arc, a figure he saw as divinely inspired, warped his sense of morality, convincing him his actions served a higher purpose. The villages around Machecoul and Tiffauges lived in terror. Parents forbade children from wandering alone, yet Gilles' men were relentless, targeting the vulnerable orphans, beggars, or peasants, too poor to be missed. A 1439 testimony recounts a mother's anguish. Her son Guillaume vanished after delivering eggs to the castle. She dared not accuse Gilles, fearing his wrath. His noble status and ties to the crown made him untouchable, or so he thought. But his recklessness was unraveling his shield. Selling family lands to fund his lifestyle angered his brother René, who began questioning Gilles' affairs. In 1438, a seemingly minor incident planted the seeds of his downfall. Gilles clashed with a local priest, Jean Le Ferron, over a disputed property. Enraged, Gilles kidnapped Ferron, a reckless act that drew the church's scrutiny. The Bishop of Nantes, Jean de Malestroit, began investigating rumors of missing children, compiling complaints from desperate families. Gilles, oblivious, continued his double life, hosting feasts while bodies piled up in secret. His arrogance blinded him to the noose tightening. How long could Gilles maintain his charade? What would it take to expose a monster cloaked in piety? The next part dives deeper into the unraveling of his empire and the moment his crimes came to light. Stick with us and let us know in the comments, how does Gilles' hypocrisy make you feel? The crumbling facade. When does a monster's mask finally slip, exposing the horror beneath? 1440. Gilles de Rais' world of wealth, power, and dark rituals was teetering on the edge of collapse. his carefully crafted image unraveling under the weight of his own recklessness. If this chilling dive into dark history has you hooked, hit that like button, subscribe to Weird History Unveiled, and share this video with friends who can't resist a shocking true story. Leave a comment below. What would you have done if you suspected Gilles' crimes but feared his power? In the late 1430s, Gilles de Rais' lavish lifestyle had pushed him to the brink of ruin. His obsession with alchemy and extravagant displays, banquets, plays, and private armies had drained his fortune. Historical records show he sold off family estates, infuriating his brother René and other relatives who relied on those lands. By 1439, Gilles owed creditors thousands of livres, a staggering sum, even for a noble. Desperate, he doubled down on his occult pursuits, believing Francesco Prelati's promises that demonic forces could restore his wealth. The rituals grew more frenzied, the body count higher. Trial documents estimate 100 to 200 children had vanished by this time, their fates sealed in the blood-stained chambers of Machecoul and Tiffauges. Gilles' arrogance, however, was his Achilles' heel. In May 1440, he made a fatal mistake. Enraged over a property dispute, he stormed the church of Saint-Étienne de Mer Morte, seizing a priest named Jean Le Ferron and holding him hostage. This wasn't just a tantrum. It was sacrilege, a direct challenge to the Catholic Church's authority. The Bishop of Nantes, Jean de Malestroit, saw an opportunity. For years, Malestroit had heard whispers of missing children linked to Gilles' castles. The Ferron incident gave him the leverage to act. He launched a quiet investigation, gathering testimonies from grieving families. A 1440 letter from Malestroit notes numerous complaints about children lost without trace, pointing to Gilles' estates. The investigation uncovered horrors beyond imagination. Villagers once too terrified to speak came forward. A woman named Perrine recounted her son's disappearance after visiting Machecoul to beg for food. A farmer described seeing Gilles' men, Henriette and Poitou, luring boys with promises of work. The stories aligned, children entered the castle and never left. Malestroit's agents interviewed former servants, some of whom confessed to disposing of remains burned in furnaces or buried in hidden pits. Modern forensic analysis suggests the sheer volume of victims would have required a systematic cover-up, implicating Gilles' entire inner circle. Gilles, oblivious to the growing storm, continued his double life. He hosted feasts, charming guests with his wit, while Prelati conducted rituals in secret towers. But the church was closing in. In July 1440, Malestroit issued a formal accusation charging Gilles with heresy, sodomy, and murder. On September 15th, soldiers arrested him at Machecoul. The raid uncovered grim evidence bones, blood-stained tools, and locked rooms reeking of decay. Gilles' reaction was chillingly defiant. According to court records, he sneered at his captors, claiming his noble status made him untouchable. But the evidence was overwhelming. The trial began in October 1440, a spectacle that shocked France. Gilles initially denied everything, his charisma still a weapon. He called the accusations lies of peasants and mocked the court. But as witnesses testified, parents weeping for lost children, servants confessing under oath, his bravado cracked. One testimony described a boy's screams echoing from a tower, silenced by Gilles' own hand. Modern psychologists might see this as the moment his narcissistic facade shattered, unable to withstand the weight of truth. What would the trial reveal about Gilles' twisted mind? Could he justify his atrocities, or would he face the consequences of his monstrous acts? The next part takes you into the courtroom where Gilles' fate hangs in the balance. Stay with us and tell us in the comments. Do you think Gilles believed he was above justice, the trial of a monster? What happens when a noble's charm crumbles under the weight of undeniable horror? In October 1440, Gilles de Rais faced a trial that would strip away his heroic facade, exposing a man whose crimes shocked even the hardened judges of medieval France. If this tale of dark history has you riveted, smash that like button, subscribe to Weird History Unveiled, and share this video with anyone who loves a chilling true crime story. Drop a comment below. Could Gilles' silver tongue save him from justice, or was his fate sealed? The trial of Gilles De Rais, held in Nantes, was a spectacle that gripped the nation. The courtroom, packed with clergy nobles and weeping families, buzzed with tension. Gilles faced charges of murder, heresy, and sodomy, accusations that could mean death by burning. The Bishop of Nantes, Jean de Malestroit, presided, his face stern as he presented evidence gathered from months of investigation. Court records from 1440 detail a staggering 140 victims, though some historians estimate the true number could be higher. The charges painted Gilles not as a knight, but as a medieval monster, a man who defiled innocence in pursuit of demonic power. Gilles entered the courtroom with the swagger of a noble clad in fine velvet, despite his chains. At first he was defiant, dismissing the accusations as peasant slander. His voice, described as commanding yet melodic, captivated the room. He mocked the court, claiming his wealth and status placed him above their judgment. But the testimonies that followed silenced his bravado. Parents took the stand, their voices breaking as they recounted lost children. A mother named Agnès described her son, Thomas, vanishing after delivering milk to Machecoul. A father, Pierre, spoke of his boy, lured by promises of coin, never to return. Each story tightened the noose around Gilles' neck. The most damning evidence came from his own men. Henriette Griart and Étienne Corillot, once loyal servants, confessed under pressure. Their accounts were gruesome. Children were lured to Gilles' castles, subjected to horrific rituals, and killed. Henriette described a chamber in Tiffauges where Gilles kept trophies, small bones, locks of hair displayed like relics. Corillot admitted to burning bodies in the castle's furnaces, reducing evidence to ash. Modern criminologists might see this as a chilling precursor to serial killer behavior, with Gilles' rituals blending sadism and delusion. The court records note his obsession with summoning demons, guided by Francesco Prelati, who also faced trial, but pointed the finger at Gilles. As the evidence mounted, Gilles' composure cracked. On October 21, 1440, after a witness described a boy's body found in a hidden pit, he screamed at the court, calling them hypocrites. But the outburst cost him sympathy. The church, wielding immense power, threatened excommunication, a fate Gilles, still clinging to, his warped piety, feared deeply. On October 23, he broke, confessing in a tearful outburst. He admitted to killing dozens, perhaps hundreds, claiming demons drove him. Modern psychologists might argue this was a calculated plea for mercy, but to the court, it was proof of his guilt. The trial's climax came when Gilles begged forgiveness, kneeling before the judges. Some spectators pitied him, seeing a broken man. Others saw a monster, feigning remorse. The court sentenced him to death by hanging and burning, a punishment reserved for heretics. His accomplices faced similar fates. As the verdict echoed, the families of the lost wept their grief, a stark contrast to Gilles' theatrics. What would Gilles' final moments reveal about his soul? Could a man so steeped in evil find redemption? Or was it another act? The next part takes you to the gallows, where Gilles faces his end. Stay with us and tell us in the comments, did Gilles' confession shock you, or was it just another manipulation, the final act? Can a monster's tears wash away the blood of hundreds? On October 26, 1440, Gilles De Rais faced his execution, a moment that would seal his legacy as one of history's most horrifying figures. If this dark journey through his twisted life has you gripped, hit that like button, subscribe to Weird History Unveiled, and share this video with friends who crave shocking historical tales. Drop a comment below. Do you think Gilles' final moments showed remorse, Or was it all a final performance? The morning of Gilles' execution dawned cold and gray over Nantes. Crowds gathered outside the city's gallows, a mix of grieving parents, curious nobles, and fearful peasants. Gilles De Rais, once a marshal of France, was led in chains, his fine clothes replaced by a simple tunic. Yet even in disgrace, he carried himself with eerie composure, his blue eyes scanning the crowd. Historical accounts describe him as pale but resolute, his voice steady as he addressed the onlookers. He begged forgiveness, claiming his crimes were the work of demonic temptation. To some, it was a heartfelt plea. To others, a calculated act to secure his soul's salvation. Court records from 1440 paint a vivid scene. Gilles, sentenced to hang and burn alongside his accomplices Henriette Griard and Etienne Corriot, requested a final mass. The church, wary but bound by custom, granted it. He knelt, prayed, and wept, invoking Joan of Arc's name, a figure he still revered. Modern psychologists might interpret this as a desperate grasp for redemption, a narcissist's attempt to reclaim his heroic image. But for the families of his victims, his tears were an insult, a mockery of their loss. One mother whose son had vanished years earlier reportedly spat at the ground as Gilles passed. The execution itself was swift but haunting. Gilles climbed the gallows, his hands bound, and spoke briefly. "I am a sinner, but I seek God's mercy," he declared, according to a chronicler's account. The noose tightened, and his body was cut down before flames consumed it, a symbolic cleansing for a heretic. His accomplices followed their deaths, quieter, but no less grim. The crowd was silent, torn between horror and relief. For many, Gilles' end closed a nightmare, but it offered no justice for the children lost to his rituals. What drove Gilles to such depths? Historians point to a perfect storm. His wealth fueled unchecked power. His war trauma bred restlessness, and his occult obsession twisted his morality. Modern scholars draw parallels to serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, noting Gilles' need for control and his ritualistic killings. Yet unlike modern criminals, Gilles operated in a world where superstition blurred the line between sin and sorcery. His belief in demons, fed by Francesco Prelati's promises, wasn't unusual for the 15th century. But his actions, killing up to 200 children in pursuit of supernatural power, set him apart as a medieval monster. Jarullah's death didn't erase his shadow. Rumors swirled that his soul was damned, his castles cursed. Villagers avoided Machecoul and Tifagas, claiming ghostly cries echoed at night. His trial, one of the first documented cases of serial murder, left a mark on legal history, showing even nobles weren't above justice. But it also raised questions. How did he evade detection so long? Was his piety genuine, or a mask for his depravity? These mysteries linger, making Gilles a figure both fascinating and repulsive. What legacy did Gilles leave behind? How did his crimes ripple through history, shaping tales of horror and caution? The next part explores his enduring impact from folklore to modern debates. Stay with us and let us know in the comments. Do you think Gilles' story warns us about unchecked power, or is it just a tale of pure evil? A legacy of horror? What does a monster leave behind when his body is ash, but his crimes echo through centuries? Gilles de Rais' execution in 1440 didn't erase his shadow. It birthed a legend that haunts history, blending fact with folklore in a chilling tapestry of terror. If this gruesome journey through one of history's darkest figures has you hooked, smash that like button, subscribe to Weird History Unveiled, and share this video with friends who love unraveling the past's most shocking secrets. Drop a comment below. Does Gilles' story make you question the heroes we celebrate, or is he just a relic of a brutal age? Gilles de Rais' death marked the end of his reign of terror, but his story was far from over. In the wake of his execution, his castles Machecoul, Tifoggio, and Champtocel became symbols of dread. Villagers swore they heard children's cries on moonless nights, and local priests refused to bless the grounds, fearing lingering evil. By 1441, the French crown seized his estates, but no noble dared claim them. Historical records note that Machecoul's towers were left to decay, their walls crumbling as if rejecting human touch. This wasn't just superstition, it was a collective trauma. The estimated 140 to 200 children Gilles killed left entire communities scarred their grief-fueling tales of a cursed noble. His crimes also reshaped legal and cultural landscapes. The 1440 trial, meticulously documented, was a landmark in medieval justice. It proved that even a marshal of France could face judgment, setting a precedent for holding nobles accountable. The church, wary of occult practices, tightened its grip on alchemy and sorcery, linking them to heresy. Gilles' case became a cautionary tale preached from pulpits across France. A 1442 sermon by a Nantes cleric warned of nobles who fall to Satan's lures, using Gilles as a grim example. Modern historians see this as an early attempt to grapple with serial crime long before the term existed. Yet Gilles' story took on a life of its own in folklore. By the late 15th century, he was woven into tales of Bluebeard, the fictional noble who murdered his wives. While the connection is debated, scholars like Marina Warner argue that Gilles' atrocities inspired the archetype, a charming aristocrat, hiding a chamber of horrors. This blend of fact and myth kept his name alive, whispered in stories that chilled children and adults alike. In Brittany, parents used his name to warn of strangers, saying, "Beware the Lord who offers bread." Even today, French villages near his former estates hold annual memorials for the victims, a testament to the wounds he left. Modern perspectives add new layers to Gilles' legacy. Criminologists study him as a proto-serial killer, noting parallels with modern predators, his charm, his targeting of the vulnerable, his ritualistic methods. A 2018 psychological analysis suggested Gilles suffered from a personality disorder, perhaps exacerbated by war trauma and unchecked power. Others argue he was a product of his time where superstition and violence intertwined. Alchemy, after all, wasn't fringe in the 15th century. It was a pursuit of the elite. But Gilles' leap from curiosity to murder marks him as an outlier, a man who twisted knowledge into nightmare. His story also raises unsettling questions about heroism. Gilles fought beside Joan of Arc, a sainted figure, yet became her dark mirror. Their shared devotion to divine causes, hers to God, his to demons, highlights the thin line between zeal and madness. Today, some historians question whether Gilles' crimes were exaggerated by a vengeful church or rival nobles. While trial records are detailed, the exact number of victims remains uncertain, fueling debates. Yet the core truth, his systematic killing of children, stands unchallenged, a stain on history. Gilles De Rais is more than a historical footnote. He's a warning. Absolute power, unchecked ambition, and a fractured mind can birth monsters, even in heroes. His legacy lives in the questions he leaves. How do we spot evil cloaked in valor? What drives a man to such depths? If you're as haunted by Gilles as we are, hit subscribe, like this video, and share it to spread this chilling tale. Comment below. What's the most shocking part of Gilles' story for you? Should we dig into another dark historical figure next? This is the end of his tale, but history hides more horrors. Stay tuned.